to decide what it looks like, what format you want it to be in, the order of priority, the, you know, all of those things matter because so if you're not getting the output you want, you have to start asking yourself, what assumptions do I naturally make that's leads me to getting a different result than the AI?
So these ambiguities are these assumptions that we're making that AI can read our mind or was going to assume from previous conversations where we have to be explicit in every single instruction.
Yeah, because but you have to remember, like memory is only, so much because by the time you are in one conversation, so like say you're having a conversation in ChatGPT or in Claude Anthropic or Grok or it doesn't matter, right? Any of those chatbots, that's what they are. Those are chatbots. You assume it remembers previous conversations. Look, you can go back and look and see what the memory is, right? And then you can call it or add to it. And you can even tell it, I want you to explicitly remember this, and it will put it in the memory. But there's only so much memory, right, that you can have. One. Two, by the time you get 40 prompts into one conversation, you're already experiencing drift and hallucination. You just don't even know it.
And this is why people are not getting the results because they're not the whole that's what I've been experiencing with Claude is the whole I'm just reviewing your conversation and compacting it versus
As soon as it compacts it, it's lost the detail. It's only thinking of the highlights of that conversation,
so
right?
what I've been doing in Claude especially is I've been taking projects and I've been having my contextual conversations, exporting the context from that, uploading it as a file into the project so that it's there for my next conversation within that project environment. Does that keep me a bit safer?
Yes and no. But again, like, you know, it's only going to have so much context because, and you also only want it to have so much context because the reason why, especially with Claude, right, it will burn through your credits super fast for several reasons. One, if you're in peak hours, it burns through your credits faster. Two, what model you're using, right, especially if you're using Opus. And then thirdly, it's the window of context or the context window, right? So the larger the window you're working with, meaning like you're 40 prompts in, 50 prompts in, 100 prompts in, 200 prompts in, that is a bigger window of context. And now you're churning through more credits. So you get charged based on input, output, context window, tool calls. That's on the API side, the tool calls.
That's like
Um,
co-work, right? The tool calls.
yeah.
How do we
So
optimize and do this more efficiently?
only use the tools you need. Start new conversations and like keep it very task focused for that one
But
session.
how do we give it context for that task if there's been a
In
whole
projects, in
so in
projects.
projects, like I was saying, it's like, okay, we've got the context, upload it as a file into the project, start a new conversation.
Yeah, but it doesn't work exactly the way you think though, right? Because it's not like it's going to look at every single thing and pull that back into the context window of the new task or new conversation. It will have some of it, but it's not like it's going to have all of it. Think of it like this. I can't remember the terminology for this, but in human psychology, right? When you read a book, say it's a 300-page book, what are you going to remember out of that book after reading it? Are you going to remember every single thing that you
No,
read?
and I
No.
forget more as time goes on too.
Sure, but even if you, like, say you just finished the book, what are you most likely to remember?
The end.
And maybe the beginning.
Okay, it's like the U curve, right?
Correct. It's the middle that you lose. That is exactly how large language models are. So, how do I make sure that what's relevant and is important is extracted in context of this conversation? Making sure that I have clarified exactly what it needs to have in context for that conversation. Everybody makes assumptions. I'm like one of the few humans that really try not to make assumptions, or I'll even surface like, hey, I'm assuming this. Is that true? Right. And I'm even more anal retentive about it to the annoyance of Craig and my daughter because of dealing with AI so much. Because I'm like, every single time there's any kind of ambiguity, it's going to fill in the assumptions for you.
Yes, it's going to fill the gaps. It's like humans do that too. When you have gaps in your memory, your brain will just fill in the gaps and make shit up, which is hallucinations. And it's
Right.
ADHD is drift. I love it. It is just a neurodivergent child, AI.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the key thing is, so I mean, this is what I've been pounding into Sean because Sean's like, oh, just whip out these GPTs out of my asshole. I'm like, literally, like, you're asking me to just make a whole bunch of shit up, make all these assumptions, and that's not how this works. And so, I have like all these tables of like definitions and KPI signals and root cause and, all this stuff because if I don't have like all of these things in place, then AI is going to fill in the blank. And then you always wonder why
Well, this is
it's
this
not
is the
accurate.
conversation we've been having on my AI course, which is, how much time it takes. So we've been building the AI co-founder, but this is like if we spent as much time training an individual human as we are training Claude to be our assistant or our AI employee, we would have A player employees, the amount of time that we're giving and the amount of reference information and the amount of context and every instruction and do's and don'ts, we would have amazing employees. But that's what people are not taking the time to do, is to train it as if it was an employee so that it knows the do's and don'ts of the job you're asking it to do.
One is understanding the models themselves, how they're built, what their constraints are, what their best use cases are. But what I'm talking about is like the technology that you're going to use. Like I decided to go into Hermes. Like I ditched OpenClaw. So glad I did because like after all the stuff that has come out in the last couple of weeks, I'm like, whoo, dodged a bullet. Um,
I feel like I should say I told you so at this point. I was
no, because at the
surprised
end
when you went in on open claw.
yeah, but you know what? I don't regret doing that at all because I was able to migrate it all over to Hermes. So it's not like I lost
No, no,
anything,
no, sure.
right? And I learned a lot doing it. And that all got brought over. So like I don't regret it. But that's what I mean. Like you got to pick a pony in terms of like what tech stack you're going to use, right? And know that shit can get deprecated because already I'm dealing with shit that's going to get deprecated. Well, it's already been deprecated, but they're going to stop supporting it fully in August of this year, right? Which is annoying. So I got to redo all that shit that I'd already built out. So you're going to be dealing with deprecation. You're going to be dealing with new stuff coming out all the time. And you got to be okay with the fact of not having FOMO.
But I have massive FOMO and anxiety around it because there's just so much going on. But my question is also this, is looking at the wider picture of where we're going to be in a year, is the tokenization of it, is the affordability to the average mortal.
I mean, that's always going to be the entry to
But
barrier.
people don't realize, because we've been spoilt with ChatGPT of paying $20 a month,
Yeah, because you
kind of
don't
having
really
what we
know.
want.
Yeah,
But
you have no idea the concept of a token value.
ChatGPT now feels like I've been in kindergarten for the last couple of years, now that I've been using Claude, and I'm like, oh, this is a whole new ball game. But it's pay to play, right?
It's pay to play, but that's why I've got like all the engines I've got, right? I've got a whole cost optimization engine. I've
But
got
you're
things,
exceptional. You're
I
on the
have
point,
crons in
not
place.
not 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 1% of folk who can do that kind of
But
optimization.
this is the shit that's gonna have to happen regardless. It doesn't matter who you are. In order for this to be scalable, you have to get the token costs in a reasonable matter. Otherwise, there's going to be no ROI. And
But
that's what I
nobody
told
knows
Sean.
how to do that. Now, I mean, it's
That's not
literally, it's like
true.
you're an
I know
expert.
how to.
It's like Claude's telling me every 20 minutes.
Yeah, but this is where, so optimizing, how do you optimize? You have to understand like what are the ways you can optimize. So how do I optimize on tokens? One, like I said, your one is your prompt, right? Like people are so concerned of like you actually realize, right? Like the prompt that you put in, you're paying far less for than the output prompt, right?
What is
So
that? Hold
you
on.
could,
What do you mean by that?
okay, so like an Anthropic, if you look at their pricing model, right, you're pay a shit ton more for output than you do for input. So when you're putting your prompt in, you're paying less than the prompt that you're paying for it to come out to you.
Okay.
Okay. So how big your prompt is that goes in isn't the deciding factor of how
No,
much
how
you're
much
paying.
work that AI needs
It
to do to give you your output.
it's the output that you're paying for. So it's making sure that what you're prompting it to do is super clear and concise on the exact output you need and reduce waste, right? If you don't need that output, like part of the output, don't have it because you're paying a lot of money for it, right? So how do I optimize on tokens? One, I make sure so it is prompting, right? But it's not looking at just the input prompt. It's also looking at the exact output prompt and making sure there's no wastage between those two things. Um, you're also, again, depending on the job you need, like maybe as opposed to having it as one job, it's multiple jobs, which would actually be less money if you think about it, because if it's a really big job, not only are you then paying for more tools, so you have more tool calls, which are going to cost you more money, but you're now paying for more window of context, which also limits how what large language models you can even use because you've just pushed out a whole bunch of models depending on all the things it has to be able to do. So it's probably cheaper maybe to split out those jobs. That's why my dream cycle is like six, or well, it's now seven different crons,
Right.
right? So you're thinking about the best way to build the cycle or like the major output, and often it's splitting it up because you then, in the entire life cycle, I'm using seven different crons now, right? Well, I can use different models between those seven different crons.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
fixed on just
But this
one.
is but my point is remains the same that nobody knows how
That's
to
not
do this
true
thing.
because nobody isn't true. I know there's other
I
people that
know.
I'm
I'm not
talking to.
talking about the 0.00001%.
Yeah, well, we're the ones that are going to have to design the shit for people to use to make it
Okay, well,
scalable,
step up
right?
already.
Well, what the fuck do you think I'm doing? Like I'm building it out, I'm doing all the things.
Well,
But
we
but I'm just like that's just the basics, right? There's prompt caching, which is built into Anthropic, not for any other language model. But again, you have to understand what are the constraints, what are the limitations of every model that you're using, and maybe ones that you're not using that you should be using. So there's that. There's batching, API batching. So I do that on a lot of my stuff because that saves you 50% right there with Anthropic just by
look,
batching.
I don't, all of this is brilliant. And
Do you need of credits? It's also, again, understanding what are the peak times. So, like for Claude specifically, know the peak time hours. Understand your context window. Start new conversations probably more often than you are. Just tie them to the project and just make sure it has the right context it needs to do the job. Um, I mean, that right there is going to save a lot. So you have 5 hour windows in Anthropic, right? That you can chew through. So then that resets every window. And then you have weekly limits on Claude Cowork.
but how is the average mortal meant to remember all of this
Well,
and work with,
it's literally peak hours
and it, depending on what time zone you're in.
when you need to know it for your time zone.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's, look, for you and I, but for 99% of other business owners and users out there, it's just like they're just using it as they need it. No one's planning when they're actually needing to go in
Well,
and
I
use
have
it.
it do a lot of work while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, but you've got the tools. You've got a whole kind of infrastructure which
I'm
allows
not even
you.
talking about Finnick. Like Finnick, the Life Dash, that's something completely different. It can connect in because now Hermes can be an
How do I
MCP.
get Claude to do all of my work when I'm in
You
a
just schedule it. It has a scheduler, and then you even have the app on your phone with dispatch where you can, as long as your
what?
computer's up and alive. Oh my God. And you've been using Claude Cowork longer than me. Are you kidding
What?
me? I just
What?
started using Claude
No, I
Cowork a
haven't
few
been
weeks
using
ago.
co-work lately because it's been munching all of my credits. So,
Well, it does. So you have to know your peak hours. So peak hours, I have it in UTC time. Hang on a second.
but
Uh,
hang on a minute, because I'm looking. So it's co-work that you're going to be dispatching, right? Because I'm looking
yes,
at
you dispatch through Cowork. So when you dispatch from your phone, you just have to make sure your computer's on, running, connected, right? But you can toggle on Cowork to so that
I can't see where this dispatch thing is. I'm going to have to
the
go and Google.
dispatch should be on your phone app.
Well, so I've got to work off my phone app now, and I can't
No,
do
no, no,
co-work.
no, 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 no. Listen,
Oh,
listen,
I can
listen to
see
me.
dispatch on
What
my
I'm
phone.
saying is dispatch on the phone app, that sends the tasks to your computer automatically to do jobs in co-work. So you could be out at dinner and you could be like, "Oh shit, I need it to do something for me." And you just go into dispatch and say, "Hey, do this." And as long as your computer's up and running, it will then do that as a co-work session. For it now runs as an agent in and of itself, a managed agent, but you can schedule tasks. So I just schedule tasks and then does those things while I'm sleeping, and I just make sure my computer's on and running so it can do them.
Right, and we're going to have to continue this conversation because I've got another 2 minutes before I've got to go on another call. But we need another. We need this daily. I need you daily.
Well, it can't be daily, sorry. But look, I gave you a lot. So look up the peak hours on Cowork for you. And look up and just remember it's a 5 hour window and that resets every 5 hours. And then you've got the weekly limit
Got
that
it.
you can hit. So
Okay.
those are your two things. And then everybody doesn't need Pro Max, right? It's so just teach them how to use it better, right? Start a new conversation. If you get 20, 30 prompts in, start a new conversation under the project. That will reduce the window of context and it won't churn through your credits so fast.
You're amazing. I want to see you more.
All
I love
right.
you.
Good luck. Mwah. Love you. Bye.